There is a story coming out of upstate New York about guards beating a gentleman named Robert Brooks. Now, Robert Brooks did die after that beating, but I feel this story is not receiving enough attention. There's more information that has come out about those guards. Let's go ahead and get started here with this clip. We are not going to show the beating on here. It is very graphic. You can choose to watch it at your own, wish. But I will warn you that that video is very graphic, but you can find it on social media. But again, I'm not going to show it here. I've already watched it. It is very, very troubling and very sick. So let's get into this clip here. This is when this was reported. What you will see here is these are the guards. Again, we're not going to show the actual beating, but these are the guards here, and you'll see a glimpse of Robert Brooks, and we'll get into it. So this is the body cam.
All right, so if you're just joining us for this story, this is what we know. This body-worn camera released by Attorney General Tish James's office that appears to show members of the New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision officers there at Marcy Correctional Facility beating Robert Brooks.
And we're going to go ahead and we're going to pause it there. So these guards were awfully, if you have the time to watch the video on your own, watch the video on your own, because what they did to Robert Brooks was very, very disturbing. They didn't just beat him. There are images of them forcing, I don't know if this is paper or whatever it is they had wadded up in their hand, forcing something inside his mouth. There are images of them picking him up by his mouth. Like I tell you, it is very, very bad. There are also video of them beating his genital area. A brutal beating here while everyone else just stood by and watched. And again, these are the guards. People can feel how they want to feel about people being arrested, people going to prison or whatever. But Robert Brooks is handcuffed the entire time that this is happening. So his hands are handcuffed behind his back. And so obviously there's nothing that he can do. From what I understand, he was transferred to that facility, but regardless of the fact, nothing that Robert Brooks did disturb, like as a guard, obviously that is against policy. And there are people standing by that watched as well. So obviously this has caught the attention of Kathy Hochul and Letitia James. I want to bring in this part here because they did issue a statement. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit more information about these guards, because this is not the first time.
Just a second here. Let's put this up. So this is from State Senator of New York, Rob Ort. He says this: "I'm sickened by the brutal and senseless attack at Marcy Correctional Facility. The footage is absolutely appalling, and these violent actions cannot be tolerated. While this incident will understandably outrage New Yorkers, it's important to recognize that this horrific event does not reflect the dedicated service of the countless correction officers who risk their lives every day to maintain order and safety in our prisons." He says those responsible must be held fully accountable. There is no excuse for this behavior. That's from New York State Senator Rob Ort.
Let's pause there. So, of course, they're going to say there's no excuse for that behavior, but this has been happening for quite some time. It's not just about Robert Brooks. Now, if you're just joining, I just want to remind you again that Robert Brooks was beaten to death. And this was caught on the body cams. And the fact that they knew that the body cams were on and they continued to do what they did to him, beating his genitals, grabbing him up by his mouth, stuffing, things inside of his mouth. The fact that they did this, knowing the body cams were on, just goes to show you they've been doing it all along. it goes to show you that they knew that there would be no accountability, or they were used to not receiving any accountability. These are the people that are supposed to, I guess, maintain some type of order or whatever in the prison system. People call it the rehabilitation system, the correctional system. They don't really correct behavior. They don't really rehabilitate people. Let's just call it what it is. Not in this country. But they are paid to do a certain job. And this is what they're doing while they're on the clock. So think about this as a labor issue as well. Very, very disturbing. And it's on the body cam. On the body cam. How long have they gotten away with this?
In the meantime here, let's play the original announcement today by New York State Attorney General Letitia James.
Good afternoon. Today, my office is releasing video from the investigation into the death of Mr. Robert Brooks. Mr. Brooks had been incarcerated at Mohawk Correctional Facility and was transferred to Marcy Correctional Facility on December 9th. During the incident, he was handcuffed with his hands behind his back. He was pronounced dead at Wynn Hospital in Utica on December 10th. I do not take lightly the release of this video, especially in the middle of the holiday season. But as Attorney General, I release these videos because I have a responsibility and duty to provide the Brooks family, their loved ones, and all New Yorkers with transparency and accountability. My deepest condolences go out to Mr. Brooks's family. Under New York law, my office investigates every case in which an officer of the law, including a correctional officer, may have caused the death of a civilian. On December 16th, my office announced that it had opened an investigation into Mr. Brooks's death. As in every case, the attorneys and investigators in my office are conducting an exhaustive review of the facts and the evidence. As Attorney General, you have my word that we will use every possible tool available to us to investigate this death thoroughly and swiftly. As part of the investigation, my office obtained video from body-worn cameras that 4 of the correction officers were wearing at the time of the incident. The 4 officers had their body-worn cameras powered on, but did not activate them. So their cameras were recording video in standby mode without recording sound.
And that just speaks to something that I've talked about multiple times before on the show. Body cams were supposed to be a part of police reform. Body cams are not stopping officers or correctional officers from committing the crimes that they're committing. Does everybody see why I continue to say that you can't reform it? And it's not just about the prison system, the policing system, the criminal justice system. It's also about all these other reforms that I keep hearing people talk about. Reform the education system. I worked in education. None of those reforms solve the problem at the end of the day because the system itself is corrupt. The system itself is set up in a way, or it's designed to do what it's doing, to give accountability for some and not for others. It's not designed to succeed. And that's what people have to understand. Stop saying the system is broken. We're going into 2025 and we are going to change our vocabulary. We are going to change some of these phrases that we're so conditioned to using. We are going to stop saying that it's broken. It is not broken. It is fixed. We are going to stop pushing, oh, we just need to have reform. As you guys continue to see, reforms don't solve the problem at the end of the day. We had reforms in the healthcare system. It didn't solve the problem. Obamacare was a form of reform. It didn't solve the problem. The system itself has to be completely dismantled. You have to build something that is new. And you can see that time and time again. So the body cams do not stop officers of the law or correctional officers as well. It doesn't stop them from brutality. That was just to give the public a little bit of peace. That was just to make you feel a little bit better, right? That was to reassure you. Oh, look, they are trying to do something. Oh, they got body cams. Great. Now people will be held accountable. And as you've seen over the years, those body cams have not stopped what has been happening. So always keep that in mind. Reforms are not necessarily designed to change the system. Reforms are there to make you feel better, to make you feel a little bit more comfortable.
My team met with Mr. Brooks's family earlier this week, and they viewed the footage. These videos are shocking and disturbing, and I advise all to take appropriate care before choosing to watch them. We are releasing 8 videos today from 4 officers' body-worn cameras. 4 videos, one from each officer, that each run for the full 30 minute length of the standby mode recording, and a second version of the same 4 videos, which have been cropped to show only footage involving Mr. Brooks and the interactions between the officers and Mr. Brooks. Again, I encourage taking caution before viewing. I want to reiterate that we are investigating this case thoroughly and using every tool at our disposal to ensure that there is transparency and accountability for the events that preceded Mr. Brooks's death. I also want to make clear that this video and the conduct of these officers should not reflect poorly on the work and professionalism of the countless correction officers and correctional facility nurses throughout the state who go to work every day to protect and serve those in their care.
No, but it should reflect on the system in place that allowed it to happen and allowed them to get away with this for so long, because more information has been released about these officers. And I do want you to see this, because again, this is not just about Robert Brooks. This does go back. It says here, and the New York Times reported this, the guards in the fatal prison assault were accused of beating inmates before. So how many times do we have to see this happen? We saw this with Derek Chauvin, like a number of these police officers that we've seen on camera committing like police brutality against someone. What do we find out later on? Oh, they've had problems with this officer before. So there's no difference here in this case with the correctional officers. This has been an ongoing thing. Guards in fatal prison assault were accused of beating inmates before. 3 of the 13 guards implicated in the savage beating of Robert Brooks had been accused in lawsuits of earlier attacks in New York prisons. So pause right there. Why are they still working in the prison system? Why are they still correctional officers? Because the system that is in place is designed to let that happen. Same thing with the police officers that continue to get jobs when they have worked at different police departments and there's been issues with them before. So that's the first problem. Let's continue on. At least 3 of the New York prison guards implicated in the savage beating death of a handcuffed man, his name is Robert Brooks, had been accused of participating in similar attacks on prisoners across the state. 2 of the correction officers and a sergeant accused in the death of Robert Brooks, an inmate at Marcy Correctional Facility in Central New York, were previously named in federal lawsuits filed by prisoners accusing them of brutal attacks that left one man disfigured and another in a wheelchair. They were named in federal lawsuits. They were named in federal lawsuits, and they still continue to get jobs as correctional officers in the prison system in New York State. How does that happen? That happens when people look the other way. There was no accountability here. You're named in a lawsuit and you still continue to have that job. They were known as a beat up squad. This is what they were known of. A lawyer for one of the injured men drew a line from the earlier accusations of violence to the attack this month. The fact that they failed to rein in these officers that they knew had beaten someone else is a direct contributor to Mr. Brooks' death. This is coming from Katie Rosenfield, who's the lawyer. She criticized the New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision for fighting her client's lawsuit for 4 years. Letitia James, State Attorney General, on Friday released the video footage. So we already went through that. This part here I want to mention. A spokesman for the Corrections Department, when they were asked about earlier allegations against the officers and why the department had not acted sooner to address them, declined to comment, citing the pending investigations. Of course, they declined to comment because the system in place allowed them to be there. Governor Kathy Hochul said last weekend that she was moving to fire the 13 guards and a prison nurse who had been implicated in the attack, a nurse as well. In the videos released on Friday, Mr. Brooks is seen lying on the ground outside of the prison with his hands cuffed behind his back. He appears to have already been beaten. Yes, he was. The officers picked him up by his cuffed hands and hold his feet. Once inside the infirmary, officers tossed him onto a gurney and take turns punching him in the head, slamming a shoe against his chest, and kicking him near his genitals. No, they were kicking him. Okay, as someone who saw the video, they weren't kicking him near it. They were hitting his genitals. In case you were wondering, Robert Brooks is black. These guards were white. Like I said, the video footage is very disturbing. So if it bothers you to see these types of videos of police brutality, very much caution yourself before you decide to watch it. At one point, an officer with his hand gripped around Mr. Brooks' neck pulls him up into a seated position and repeatedly lifts him up by his throat. When he appears unresponsive, an officer gives Mr. Brooks a sternum rub, pressing a knuckled fist on his chest in a painful technique used by emergency service workers to try to revive unresponsive patients. The video shows some officers walking in and out of the room, milling about in the hallway, or looking on from the doorway. Some of those assaulting Mr. Brooks pause to change their gloves or wash those hands. Let me tell you something else. Wash their hands. If you watch the video, the people who are in the hallway who stopped to look, it's not like they chose to intervene. The body cam showed this. Some of the people stood right there at the door and just looked at what was happening. There was an image of one person who was smiling while it was happening. So they were still beating him when people in the hallway were standing there watching. How does that happen? Keep that in mind. It goes on to say, this kind of looks like another day at the office, said Jennifer Scaife, the executive director of Correctional Association of New York, a prison watchdog agency. These kinds of things don't just bubble up out of nowhere. Years earlier, some of the same guards had meted out brutal punishment against prisoners without provocation, according to a series of lawsuits that describe assaults by the correction staff in a glaringly similar detail. This was not a new thing. Not a new thing. As I said, if you watch the video, the people in the hallway did not intervene. The people who worked there, they didn't intervene. They didn't look shocked. They didn't look appalled. They weren't like, oh my God, or they weren't saying, stop, no, don't. None of that. So to me, they were accustomed to what they saw. Accustomed to what they saw. They are known as the beat up squad. Known as the beat up squad. I want to show you something else here. Shout out to Professor Zinkus who sent this to me, because this, if you look at the local news, you will see a little bit more information. Let me pull this up here because I have to be careful again, like I said, because with the images, have to be careful what we show. The beat up squad. Here we go. Let's go ahead and put this up onto the screen here. So it also says here, again, 4 of the 13 guards under investigation in the death of inmate Robert Brooks at Marcy Correctional Facility are defendants in a lawsuit alleging other cases of abuse against the prisoners, including one contending the prison has a beat up squad. So this is not new. The system is designed to protect, or the system was designed to protect what they were doing. This is not new. What happened to Robert Brooks is not the only situation with these officers. They should have never been allowed to continue working at any correctional facility. But you know what? Someone looked the other way. And I'm willing to bet you whoever is above them looked the other way. You can choose to watch the video if you wish. As I said, it is very disturbing. But Robert Brooks' family, I mean, I'm pretty sure they are very, very angry and disturbed by what they saw. What they did to Robert Brooks in that video is not only inhumane, it is disgusting. But here's what I want to leave with. Don't walk away with this or walk away from this story and say, this is not who we are. You know, a lot of times people like the attorney general and the governor, they like to say, well, this is not really who we are. And this is a one-off. No, it's not a one-off. They've been doing this for years. They're known as the beat up squad. This is not a one-off. This is just one of the incidents that you found out about. How many other prisons is this happening in? How many other correctional guards are doing this as well? Again, this is the one you know about. What about all the other ones that you don't know about? So don't walk away from this and say this is not who we are. This is the system that is in place to allow those officers to do what they did to other people and to Robert Brooks and to get away with it. There's no getting around that. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.